What's up, guys? Welcome to Information Operation. I'm Connor Ryan, and we're coming at you from Marquette, Michigan, bringing you your locally sourced ideas, thoughts, and inquiries. Today on the podcast, we feature Lauren Moore. Lauren is a seeker of ultimate truth. She started meditation in 2014 and became a guided meditation leader and conductor this year. She moved to Marquette in 2017 after completing art school in Chicago. It was truly an honor to sit down with Lauren and talk about what her journey has brought. Hopefully, you can apply this to yours. Lauren, what's up? Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. How are we feeling today?
So good. It's Friday.
Amazing.
Yay.
And you have a birthday this weekend?
It's tomorrow.
That's exciting. So, I'd like to dive right in with what you did this summer at Breath Fest, correct?
Breathe.
Breathe
Yeah.
Fest. Tell me about it.
Sure thing. So this summer, to start with, Breathe is it's a slackline festival, or it started that way.
Sure.
But it incorporates different aspects of spirituality as well. So with slacklining, you have to be really present, centered. You have to conquer a lot of fear, especially people are on these high lines, really high up in the air.
How high are we talking?
I'm bad at gauging, so I don't know. High.
Like 30 feet, as
Yeah,
tall as the
at
trees?
least. Yeah.
Dang, okay.
Yeah.
With a safety rope
definitely.
or a safety net?
Yeah, usually they have a little harness and they're clipped in
Sure.
to the.
That's legit.
Typically, that's the safe
So
way to go
super
about
focused, super present.
it. Yeah. So naturally, things like yoga and meditation go hand in hand with slacklining. Not all the time, but it's definitely beneficial. And so I don't slackline, but I was invited to teach there because I do meditation.
Yeah.
So I taught a class on living your dream life and how to do that through some different meditation practices. So
And did you teach more than one class, or was it just
taught one class.
one time? And how long was it?
It was an hour and 15 minutes or so. Yeah.
Nice. Did the people dig it? Was
Oh,
it
yeah.
yeah? What was it like?
It was great. We just did guided meditations and everyone was really relaxed, really open-minded. That whole festival is just full of really beautiful people that are just there to love and be
Sure.
there. We did some like a hands-on little crafty project and everyone was super into that. And
Yeah, kind of break the ice kind of thing.
yeah,
Very
and
nice.
I make sure not to ask for feedback, but I got a lot of feedback that was very
Sure.
positive,
Yeah.
and yeah, people were really grateful, and the process was
That's
very
interesting.
deep process.
Why do you ask not to hear feedback?
It's a whole thing with teaching spiritual things that I'm really surrendering my ego. I'm not in it for me. I'm not in it for recognition
Sure.
or for someone to be like, wow, you helped me, you changed me, you did this thing. It's very much inviting a higher power to take over me and to teach through me. So
Yeah.
to ask for feedback, I know it's typically coming from a place of like insecurity or ego, being like, hey, how was this process for you? Because I want to hear, my like small self wants to hear
What you did good,
what I
what you
did
did
good, what I
bad.
did bad. Yeah.
Right. And that's less trust and less listening.
Right. So when I'm really listening and surrendered and I know and I have no wavering in my faith and trust,
Yeah.
there's no need to question. I know that that whole time I was turned over and what needed to happen did. So it's like,
Sure.
yeah, it's just like a cherry on top when you don't ask for feedback and then people come up to you, just they're moved. They tell you, you know.
Definitely. Because
Yeah.
it's almost just allowing it to move through you rather than forcing it, manipulating it to be a certain way.
Right.
Now that's super important with like meditation and guided meditation, but anything else as well. Like I immediately think of like dance or art. It can't be staged or manipulated by the mind too much. It almost needs to be completely surrendered.
Yeah. Like a flow state, a state of being in flow.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
So when you say spiritual practice as meditation, I feel like a lot of people might not get exactly what you're saying. Could you explain a little further about how those two coincide?
a spiritual practice and meditation,
Yes.
how they overlap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Um,
I get a lot of feedback on meditation, like, I just shut my mind off. I'm just shutting everything out to my eyes closed, completely black, and, nothing's coming in, nothing's coming out. It's more so just shutting down the senses.
which to me that would be a spiritual experience.
I
Maybe not
agree.
to some.
Yeah.
I hear a lot with meditation, like just that people can't do it,
Yeah,
can't quiet your mind, and it's definitely breaking through that. That there's a phase of that for sure. There was for me.
definitely.
And maybe a good way to answer the question is to talk about how I got into meditation because it's like starting from that beginning
Yeah.
point.
Where your journey began.
And I just started doing it for some peace. So it wasn't really a spiritual endeavor in the beginning at all. It
Right.
was just like, I have tons of anxiety. I need something to help me. And I ended up living at a spiritual center by some weird whim. So that doesn't happen to everybody.
Sure. That's a pretty nice foot in the door.
Definitely.
Literally.
That going on in my basement.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. Um, I feel that inevitably, if someone gets into meditation, it will become a spiritual practice, whether it starts that way or not.
Right. If it's organic,
Yeah.
right? If they don't have somebody saying you have
If
to
you're
meditate,
practicing.
right? If
Right.
you're
Yeah.
earnestly like seeking it out, like I want to start this practice. Your higher self kind of knows that there's a reason. There's a rhyme and reason to
Right.
what's going on. So you
Yeah.
started living at this center, and what was that like?
Well, it was interesting because I was 19 at the time. I was living in Chicago. I had an internship at a really grungy rock venue, and I was like in that scene of music, partying and like rock and roll, like not giving a
Fuck.
yeah. So
Sure.
it's safe to say.
There's no rules.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, like I don't give a fuck. I don't care about anything. I was very much in this state, so it's really funny that I ended up by chance living at the spiritual center. But I was trying to think earlier about my first encounters with meditation, and I really can't even remember those early experiences. All I remember was just finally feeling at peace for the first time in a long time. And once I found that and touched that, it was like, that's what I've been looking for in all these bars and all these concerts and all these things. This is like the peace and satisfaction that I've been looking for in
Yes.
all these places. And it's really empowering when you find that within yourself and you find it literally by following your breath. It's the most simple,
Yeah, rather than
incredible
reaching
thing.
out for all these
Uh-huh.
things, all these materials, all the money, the status, all the things that the ego loves, you're just searching in, looking inward,
Yeah,
and you have everything you need.
right. Yeah, that was a big lesson with teaching
Yeah.
too.
So it's kind of like one of those things you have to go there. Nobody can tell you what it's like on the other
Right.
side
Yeah,
because it's so different for everybody.
absolutely.
So once you touch that joy, it was like there's no going back.
Absolutely. It just fed the fire for sure.
So how
Yep.
did you move forward?
I started going to weekly meditations with a group of people, which is I loved that, having the support of a community of people that are
Yeah.
also doing the same thing. It's really a gift,
Right.
a huge one. Yeah.
Do you think it's
So
possible without that?
absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. And for some people, it's like hindering for them to meditate with other people. So it's different for everyone.
Right.
The biggest thing with that is just like if it feels right for you, then it's right. If it doesn't, then it's probably not. Yeah, so I went to weekly meditations, and the spiritual center I went to offered a lot of workshops for deepening understanding of things. And it was really weird. I didn't have much money, then, but weirdly, every time money would just show up for these things. It was the weirdest thing. Like the first one was a Oneness Awakening course. So it's a weekend retreat, and you get immersed into oneness, which is this practice that engulfs all religions, all non-religions,
Yeah.
just like the oneness
It's
of
inviting,
everything.
bringing everything together as one.
Absolutely. And getting in touch with that with yourself. And it was like they were lowering the rate to like $50, which was pretty tiny for what they were offering.
Yeah.
I didn't even have $50 though. So I wasn't going to do it. And the day before, I just found a $50 bill. It was so weird.
Get on the ground?
It was in an old purse that I hadn't used in forever.
Right.
And like it was just in there.
Like money pants.
I just happened to. It was so wild.
So you had to go.
I had to
You
go.
listened.
Yeah, of course.
You could have went out and blew that money.
I could have.
You know?
Yeah, but that fire had been lit at that point, and I really wanted to go, and that number was in my head, $50. That was the first of money popping into my life in really weird ways. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that course really just blew the doors open for me. It was huge to spend a weekend in meditation. And it was a lot of processes.
Sure. Different practices.
Which, like, okay, a lot of people don't know what a meditation process would be. And that can be for many different things. So it can be for healing past relationships. It can be for healing relationships with your parents. It can be for getting in touch with your higher self.
Right.
It can be for getting in touch with your masculine side, your feminine side. It can be for addictions.
Dissolving the ego.
Yeah.
Dissolving things that aren't serving you.
And so really sitting in silence can definitely do all those things for you. But there's also these processes and workshops, and some of them are helpful. They will guide you through meditation, similar to what I'm doing now with my teaching.
Yeah.
Guide you through a process of just starting where you are and leading you through the mind, through the body, releasing the mind and body
Right.
into these really deep, transcendent things.
Right.
So,
Because a lot of people, they hear all this and they hear all the hype about a lot of these spiritual practices, and they don't know where to get started.
right.
Where would you say to get started?
Really, honestly, I would listen to YouTube meditations and things, and that's super helpful.
We actually have one on the channel with
Oh, heck yeah.
Miss Lori.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Hit that up
Lori
for
joking
sure.
in.
Yeah.
It's definitely, you have to do some scrolling, but we're going to come out with some new ones here pretty soon.
Yeah. So, like, when I was getting started, if I had a lot of anxiety or I was feeling depressed, like longing for the past, I would Google or like search in YouTube guided meditation for anxiety, guided meditation for helping me fall asleep.
Yeah.
And there are so many things out there. And
Right.
like some of it is great, some of it is not. It's like kind of a fishing through, but usually if I would just listen to my intuition, I'd be guided to the right ones, of course, because that's how that works.
Yeah, you're kind of trusting that process.
Yeah. So like YouTube, finding groups of people who are doing it is really helpful. Yeah, I've found many through like Facebook events. I'll just search for meditation
Sure.
or something like that. And there are people out there doing it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
There's so many resources.
Yeah.
So you have the people who maybe don't know, and then you have others who may reject. That meditation is a waste of time. That's what I hear a lot too. Just sitting in silence, like, that's a waste of time. What am I accomplishing here? What would you say you're accomplishing by meditating?
So basically, we're kind of like a walking system. Like we have really complex systems and our perspective, and it shapes literally everything we do. It shapes your efficiency while you're at work or at the gym or talking to your family. Your brain, your mindset is this underlying foundation. And so spending time in meditation is clearing that space, is seeing what's going on. It's just witnessing that, seeing like,
Right.
What is
And
my
acknowledging it.
underlying, yeah. What's my it's like your compass and it's such a big directive thing. So
Yeah.
spending time there, yeah, even just in awareness it helps you in so many ways to get more out of life.
Right.
And if like a lot of the people I hear that they don't have time and whatever, they're in a hurry, they have a lot to do, sitting for 5 minutes, like I think about how often I do other really stupid things for 5 minutes, like scroll through Facebook or
Yeah.
even sit and think about something. I will think about something for 5 minutes.
Right.
So it doesn't even take a lot of time. That's the truth of it. It doesn't take a lot of time.
Exactly.
And it's resetting that foundation that you're coming at everything in your life with.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it allows you to walk in truth through the
Mm-hmm.
rest of your life
Mm-hmm.
because you witness it
Right.
in that space.
You have less regrets because you're in that space. You're more present. You're more with it. You can see more clearly what you truly want, what you really don't. You're able to discern better,
Mhm.
take better care of your body.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you're always in center and in truth and you're present, what will you have to regret?
Right. Nothing. Right. Always omnipresent, right?
Yeah.
Present always
Mm-hmm.
in the moment rather than connected to some idea of how maybe it should be. And that's,
Mm-hmm.
expectations. I feel like a lot of times individuals get, caught up in pride, in doubt, in
Oh, yeah.
shame, and ego.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like the barrier of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because the mind, those are constructs that are constructed by your intellect,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And I think it's important to acknowledge that those things are perfect. They serve us in
Yeah,
ways. They're natural human things. Coming at them with like a hatchet and wanting to smash them down. I've been there and done that, especially in my meditation practice, but
yeah,
that doesn't actually get you anywhere.
they
You
come
have
back.
to love those parts and just be with them so you can understand them
Yeah,
and make sure they're not your masters.
yeah, and
Yeah.
truly like let them go.
Mhm. Right. If you try to do that too prematurely, no es bueno.
No es bueno. No habla.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Seriously. So when you let those things go, where do they go?
I think they're just released into the collective. So we're all out here doing our thing, all these people on the planet, all these organisms on the planet, the whole universe, we're all out here, right? And when you release those things, it just releases back into the collective. Likely, it needs to go serve someone else. We need these things like doubt and fear and these things to teach us
Yeah,
so we can evolve,
and
to
shape our
keep us
path.
alive.
Right.
Yeah. So they don't really, and little pieces of them can kind of hide out in your tissues and in your spiritual body.
Yeah.
But when you fully release them, they're just released back into the universe here.
Right.
A lot of times, if I'm releasing a lot, I'll kind of contemplate just the complexity of our earth, even, and how it can hold whatever I need to release. If I need to release hatred or anger, like it can handle it.
Yeah.
Our earth has seen raging forest fires and hurricanes. It can handle your anger. It can handle these things.
Little,
It knows what to
yeah,
do
little
with
bodily
that.
stuff. It channels it into
Yeah.
something else.
Mm-hmm.
Something else probably more productive,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And those things that we're talking about, they seem to be a barrier as well. When first getting into meditation, I know I experienced this. Some people may experience not liking to be alone. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be alone. I don't want to sit with myself in silence. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost, there's fear there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of fear there. Where do you think that comes from?
I think that, like we were talking about, comes from we're pretty trained to satisfy ourselves with things outside of ourselves.
It's a conditioning.
So reaching for anything, any person just having company or the TV on or
Yeah.
something, some
Some
kind
kind
of
of noise.
outward distraction to bring your attention there so you don't have to look at what's going on in here. What's going on in here is kind of scary. It can
It
be.
can be.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be.
I think once you get in touch with your higher self, which can sound like a really high and mighty thing to be talking about,
It
but
can almost sound religious.
ultimately what we're talking about is like the life force that's in our body. If we want to talk about it scientifically, it's the electricity firing between our neurons, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this life force that nobody can deny is there, and when you're dead, it's not. It's that consciousness.
Right. Somebody put it to me once, like, if what you see and perceive with your five senses is a movie on a movie reel, little boxes, it's what's between.
Mm-hmm.
It's the entirety
Right.
of the
Mm-hmm.
film reel.
Yeah. It's the thing that's experiencing all of these things.
Yeah, some may say subconscious,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but it's more than that because it's
Mm-hmm.
your conscious as
You can
well.
become conscious of your subconscious.
Become conscious, your subconscious.
Yeah. So I think once you get in touch with that, it can be scary though because your limited identification, your limited definition of who you think you are does start to dissipate and you start to be like,
Wait a minute.
"Oh, who am
There's
I?
yeah,
This ground is shaky.
there's stages
I'm
to
no
it.
longer a 22-year-old girl. Like, no,
Right.
I'm everything."
Whoa.
Yeah, that can
Right.
be freaky.
Right.
Understandable. It can seem really weird and crazy, but
And it's
once
what
you
you've built your entire life around up
right.
to this point.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you have this identity
Yeah.
that you're so connected with.
Yeah, like your
And
little name tag on your desk in elementary school, up to like your little Instagram profile. You're like, yeah, this is me.
this is me. And it's real to you. It's your
Yeah.
reality.
And it's a totally natural thing. There's nothing
No doubt.
wrong with it, right? Like, it's okay.
Right.
It's important to say.
But there's a lot of self-confidence that gets built up around that,
Yeah.
and all that has to come down in order to
Mm-hmm.
reach these depths that you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about.
And then once you get in touch with that piece of you that is eternal, then you can comfortably sit with yourself.
Right.
And you don't need anything else because you recognize you are everything else. It's
Right.
all within you.
Right.
So then,
And you can honestly go out in the world and have self-esteem
mm-hmm.
because you know that
Right.
you're walking in truth.
Mm-hmm.
You have nothing to hide anymore.
Yeah.
There's no demons.
Mm-hmm.
And demons can be, simple stuff.
Right.
The shit you're doing on the weekend that you don't want your boss to know about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't exist anymore, it's like a weight.
Mm-hmm.
It gets lifted off your shoulders,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it seems like it's almost like the road less traveled, or it may be compared to swimming upstream. How do you deal with that?
I've dealt with it in different ways throughout my path for sure. For a long time I wanted to like share this and have everybody be on this level with me. Like, guys, are you seeing this? Like, come see this. And there's a big piece of that that's important. It's important to share the vision, but it has to be in ways where people come to it on their own.
Yep.
And I had to learn that the hard way for sure.
What do you mean?
I've just tried to get people to see, and I'm engaging in the stuff again because I'm arguing with them like, no, don't you see? It's this way. We are everything. And
Right.
it's even like the words that you use to describe these spiritual things. So many people have walls up against them that it's even just comes down to linguistics. A lot of times people can't hear certain words and they just get really caught up in it and it's crazy. But they're not ready, so
Yeah.
but the more I just stick to my practice, the more I deepen my anchor of that higher self, the more I know when to share, how much to share. And it doesn't really bother me at all if people are on that level or not. I know that, like, I'm always open and I'm always turning over and asking to be used to help people find the light, find inner peace, find,
Themselves.
yeah. But I don't, I trust that the right people will come to me, and they do. So, or opportunities like teaching.
Yeah.
I know that the people that come to my class clearly want to learn these things, so there we go. Then I'll share, and it's this open thing.
Right.
But it can be difficult. I read something in a book recently that helped me a lot about that. And it talked about how a long time ago, like when life was forming into life, a long time ago, a billion years ago, how like the first flower on earth, just thinking of the imagery of the first flower to bloom, because flowers aren't actually that old,
Right.
believe it or not. Interesting. And
Well, yeah,
how,
it took a long time for plants to like
right,
actually be able to have the water and the air and the
the
atmosphere.
environmental conditions, right?
Yeah.
The conditions of the globe, the global conditions.
Right.
So the first flower, there was only, the global conditions at that time only supported one flower. Then eventually it was a handful, and they were few and far between, and there were these rare, amazing things. But the global conditions were not ready yet to support a global flowering. And eventually it was, right?
Yes.
And so comparing that to consciousness and the flowering of human consciousness. So there was a long time ago, many people, not many, few and far between, people who were awake.
Yeah.
We talk about like Jesus, Buddha, like the Zen masters of Taoism that created yin and yang. They didn't
Even like
create
yeah,
yin and
even
yang,
like
but
Muhammad of Islam's
right.
disciples.
Yeah. So we think of these people who lived a long time ago that really seem to be pretty with it in terms of this higher consciousness stuff.
Yeah.
And how the conditions, the global conditions, were not ready for a global human consciousness flowering then. And how over time we become more able to digest the things that they had to say.
Yeah.
And so, just like that, I like that comparison.
I do too.
Yeah, gave
So,
me a lot of peace.
so it happened as it should. You know, it
Right.
always happens as it should.
Yeah.
So even though it happened in the past and may have caused a lot of ugly things to happen,
Mhm.
all that was as it should be.
Mhm.
Do you think we're now more ready for a conscious flowering?
It's hard to say.
Yeah, yeah. More ready now than then?
Hmm. I think the kindling is there.
Mm-hmm.
We're in this time where everything's so connected that it could happen like wildfire if people's hearts were open. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's so much fear right now.
Right.
A lot of it.
Discrimination.
But I have to believe that there's a balance. So there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of love. There is a lot of love, and we
Yeah.
have to believe in that.
In hearts, you talk about hearts being open. A lot of time hearts are open to give, but not to receive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's truly what's required to have an open heart is
Mm-hmm.
to receive as
Both
well.
ways. Mm-hmm.
Kind of like an open mind
Mm-hmm.
for new ideas, but to let that love in or let that light in from the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is next? Like, where
Hmm.
is all this um, heading
Going.
for you? We don't have to take it out to that general
So
level.
like the whole
Yeah,
world, the whole
yeah, we
universe.
don't have to go there.
For me, the most recent thing I've gotten into is this breathless state.
Mm,
This Kriya. Yeah.
yep.
And it's very new to me still. But I feel like I've unlocked a huge door with that. And it took me a really long time to get there. I don't know that it takes everyone that amount of time, but like many years of meditating. I feel like you've gotten into it pretty quick.
Definitely. It's a month or so,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And my journey with meditation and kind of what we're talking about, I would say truly began in January
Mm-hmm.
2018,
Wow.
which is actually the birthday of this podcast.
Wow.
So
Cool.
it's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
when the revolution kind of took place
Mm-hmm.
and everything really got turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see it right.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see it for what it truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the breathless state started about a month ago, and for people who don't know what that is, it's during your meditation practice, using something called pranayama breath, which is pretty, I don't want to say aggressive, but pretty conscious breathing. Almost everything, all of your focus is centered around your breathing and really expanding through the diaphragm and expanding in all directions through breath and using your abdominal wall and abdominal muscles to really like have forceful breath. And then after a point, your body is sufficiently supplied with oxygen to the point where you don't need to breathe for your body to be sustained with the oxygen that it needs. And let me tell you, when you're meditating and you cut the breath, or the breath is no longer there, that is complete stillness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
In
amazing.
in time and space, you are still.
Yeah.
With a still mind, like we talked about, getting over and letting go the complications that your mind may bring into the space.
It's hard. Immediately, the first time I slipped into it, you're literally like, my fear of death comes in. Body's like, you need to take a breath. Like, you are
Right.
going to
It's very
die.
primary, very
Yeah.
primal.
But sitting with that and getting to the point of really, you, it's kind of a crazy thing to fathom that you don't need to breathe all the time.
Right, just like you don't need to eat. And Buddhist monks, like a lot of people, I feel like when you start to bring this stuff up, are like, "Oh, are you a monk? Are you like this?"
Right? Yeah.
It's like, no, not quite.
Yeah.
Monks really do set the example, and they set the bar extremely high for what is possible for humans. Um, but but that's not for everybody,
Right.
right? The monastery is not for everybody to live their lives.
Right. It's not necessary. There's like Ram Dass,
Yeah,
super holy man. He lived like downtown New York City for the longest time.
yeah,
And he says
yeah.
like once you reach a point, you should be able to live anywhere.
To reintegrate
Yeah.
and serve your purpose there, right? Help others. Because the monks, what they're doing is totally righteous,
Yeah.
in the most literal term,
Yeah.
because they are setting the example for people to learn what they can do in their truth,
Right.
right? That is their truth. The monastery school, hanging out, there, doing their thing there.
That's a great example for really like ultimately how to truly help people. And that's by following your truth and your
Right.
path. And that's the highest thing you can do. And it seems selfish or something at first to like a really a young
Surfacey,
mind
yeah.
in this way. But it's the most selfless thing you can do is to honor your truth and your unique path and be truthful.
Right. Because at some point that allows the bucket to overflow,
Right.
right? If you're filling your bucket with these drops of water, eventually it's going to overflow. Now, what happens to that excess water? It gets shared
Yeah.
with everybody and everything that surrounds you.
Right. Right. Because all these things that we have inside that, at least me historically, and I'm sure other people keep tucked away, like the vulnerable parts, or the parts of you that want to skip and dance through the street. Like we all have those things. We all have these things underlying of this human thing of like wanting love and freedom and like
Connection,
companionship.
and
Yeah.
understanding.
And when one person, even just one person, lets that come through and it takes a level of humility to be humble enough to let these things come through that are kind of wacky sometimes.
Yep.
But even just one person, that just can have a crazy chain effect because people see, like, oh, that person thinks it's okay to skip through the street. I want to do that every day. Like, okay, I'm going to do that now.
Yeah.
And that's a very small scale example, but like the highest thing you can do is just honor your own truth.
Yeah, it's leading by example,
Yeah.
right? That's always
Right.
all the mentors in my life have always been leaders by example. They don't just talk the talk. They're walking the walk too. And if not, they have walked that walk. My wrestling coach, my father, my jiu-jitsu instructor, all those guys, and Lori and Jen with yoga, have walked the walk.
Mm-hmm.
They are practicing what they preach,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a beautiful thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a teacher of meditation, do you feel like sometimes that is intimidating?
A little. So when I knew I would be teaching, I started basically conditioning. And by conditioning, I was meditating
Yeah.
all the time. Making sure it's more of like just honoring that, honoring people opening up to me and trusting me to guide them into higher consciousness,
Yeah.
where it really made me get my shit together. I was making sure I was clearing anything that was not my highest consciousness. So it
Right.
was like spiritual boot camp for like 3 months before I breathe.
Yeah.
Meditating, going through, I went through the process that I taught at least once a week, very deeply for like a
Wow.
couple hours.
Yeah.
And each time I got little tidbits that like I included in the final lesson, but just and I had to like face some people along the way and say some truths and just get some stuff cleared out along
Yeah.
the way, making sure I was like a really clear channel,
Yeah.
that
A,
there wasn't anything
a
tainting
clear
that.
channel. There's no dirt in the pipe.
Right.
You're spewing all this water all over,
Mm-hmm.
purifying and cleaning space.
Right.
You don't want there to be dirt in the pipes.
Absolutely.
I
So
was,
it was a lot of yeah, long meditations. I would hike out to like Presque in the middle of the island there, or Wetmore, or like
sure.
go be super excluded from everything, which isn't necessary, but I like to do that and go through the process. And I was doing yoga at Tulifesi
Yeah.
pretty much every day for 3 months to
Yeah.
condition leading up to that. It was like body, mind, spirit.
All aligned.
Yeah, which so I love teaching for many reasons, but one is that it makes me get my shit together because I like
That's a good point. Yeah.
really I've always been someone that loves to serve other people, and I'm learning how to do that through serving myself, my higher self. But it's a very great motivator for sure to be
Yeah.
like I desperately want to help people get to this point of inner peace, and it's really evolutionary. I
Yeah.
want to help our species evolve
Right.
into its potential.
That's pushing the boundaries of human capabilities.
Right.
That is a very worthy cause.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a responsibility?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
The responsibility to share with
Mm-hmm.
other people. It's just kind of like the essence of it. Like once you get there, it's just I've recognized and accepted that like everybody is me and I'm a part of them as well. So in that, it's
Yeah.
like
How would you explain that to somebody?
that understanding
I am
of
you,
I am
you are
you, you are
me,
me.
we are it.
Help them see.
Love it.
How would I explain that? Well, it comes from that part of sitting quietly, getting in touch with your inner self, and often I have like cosmic visions in my meditations
Mm-hmm.
of envisioning the whole cosmos, the whole universe. And from that scale, it's you can't pick out individuals. You can't.
Right. It's kind of like, instead of walking around the forest with a microscope, looking through a microscope saying, I know what the forest looks like. Take the microscope away, all right, and get in a plane and fly over it
Right.
and then compare the two,
Yeah.
right?
And that doesn't mean that like there aren't individuals, but even it gets kind of trippy, but it's like
This is
there's
hippie talk,
a oh
man. This is
yeah.
hippie talk,
There's
man.
like a gravitational force field that holds everything together. If you want to talk
Yeah.
science, we can talk science of like molecules, atoms bonded together. So even between you and me right now, there's space, but like this space as we perceive it is an illusion. Like we are one thing here.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is a shared reality.
Right.
And then if one of us were to get distracted and maybe like look down at our phone or maybe start looking out the window, that shared reality gets altered by individual, that
It's
happens.
still one thing though.
It is. It's just a little different.
It's
I
just not
noticed
as
that.
clean as a connection. You can be connected to that shared space and you can divert.
Yeah.
But even if you're diverting, like, okay, a guy looking at his phone, if you're looking at him from the sun, he's still a part of the earth.
You're right. You're right. I'm just thinking I've become a lot more conscious of
Yeah.
when people are truly here
Yeah.
and now. Like
Mhm.
be here now
Yeah.
kind of deal.
Mhm. Right. There's a difference between being in a conscious state of being connected, being conscious of that like oneness,
Right.
and being not and being somewhere else. And even me, I've been meditating for like almost 5 years.
Yeah.
I still go back and forth between the doorway, and I don't think that will ever change unless I go become a monk in India.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or a monk wherever. Doesn't
Anywhere.
have to be India.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of distractions,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there we have an attention span. You know,
Mm-hmm.
even through practice, like I like to say, yoga, meditation, even exercise is a practice to employ in your everyday life
Mm-hmm.
with whatever you do, whatever sets you free.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are a practice to
Mm-hmm.
get there.
Right.
So if meditation is a practice, life is the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of becomes all one lifestyle
Right.
after a certain period of
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm. So we're chilling at Lumi and we're meditating the fuck out of that shit. Like
Right.
right? Like I'm dancing, but there's a lot of transcendent things going on in here, you know?
Right.
Yeah, or you're shopping at Meyer, but like being super conscious or
Yeah.
talking to your mom
Yeah.
and meditating at the same time.
Sometimes
Um,
necessary.
and maybe sometimes I think maybe I misuse the word meditation because that's more of a reflection. Like I'm just having a mirror on myself while I'm having those conversations,
Right.
which is a form of meditation, reflection, contemplation.
Yeah. And that practice just slowly makes its way into your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
So
it's a game changer.
so do you think there's a way to have that attention, infinite attention in that space rather than I have this short people say I have a short attention span,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's why they might get bored with the meditation process,
Mm-hmm.
or they're having a conversation and they're all over the place, and then they're back in and then out and in and out. That's what would be called like a short attention span.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible? I know it's possible to make progress there,
Mm-hmm.
but to be infinitely attentive, do you
Mm-hmm.
think that's attainable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My gut feeling is that it would take like a radical lifestyle shift. I think it'd be really hard, but possible to maintain that at all times. It'd probably be a lot of stopping, being
Mm-hmm.
like catching yourself and coming back, course correcting.
Yeah.
But it'd be incredibly difficult going to like your 9 to 5 and
Keeping that intact.
right, which I'm doing right now. Like I sit in marketing meetings and I will be holding that consciousness in that space, but it's hard to participate and be in that space.
Right.
But it's kind of like they're one and the same. Yeah, but it's definitely possible to be in that infinitely. I think that's a very high goal. I've definitely how do I say that? Strive. I strive for that.
Yeah. Sure.
And I've done that without realizing what a huge thing that is.
Right.
Yeah. And then it'll be
It's
I slipped
fleeting.
out of my infinite consciousness for an hour today
Yeah. It's
and like kind of beating myself up about it. But then I've had some friends who don't meditate at all and stuff like that and they'll be like, "Dude, you're trying to do really impossible things." Like
well then you are. You know, to them you are.
right, yeah.
If it's
Or
a
like the at least really difficult things. Like
right.
this is not an easy thing to take on.
No, it's the road less traveled.
Yeah.
And it's going against all of your prior conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But it's definitely possible.
but like you said, it's rewarding
Yeah.
with that infinite
Mhm.
joy.
It's kind of like building a muscle too. Like the more you go to that place, I'm starting to, it's really awesome that finally when I start to get angry or offended or something like that, my immediate thing is to go to that space.
Boom, right into it.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling this way?
Right. And I'm okay with it. Like, I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm having this anger thing, but like, what's really going on here? And typically, there's like some underlying thing. There's either a truth that I haven't spoken up about and I need to tell somebody something, or it's touched a part that was wounded like 15 years ago. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. Like, here's some unworthiness. Like, okay, well, hold that to the flame of infinite consciousness, knowing that you are infinitely worthy. And it's like, okay, it just dissolves.
Vanished
But
in
it's a
real time.
process. Yeah.
Right. But to acknowledge that is a process. To dig all that up.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely invite people to do the digging
Yeah.
if they're ready.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
one thing you said you cued in on is when people are ready,
Yeah.
they will hear. And like you could say all this until the cows come home
Mm-hmm.
or whatever they say, and nobody hears it. You only
Right.
hear what you want to,
Mm-hmm.
or
Ready
what you're
for.
ready for, what
Mm-hmm.
you allow yourself.
Yeah, there's a like in the Be Here Now book, Ram Dass.
Yeah,
He says like you can't force the snake to shed its skin before it's ready. You can't force that.
yeah.
You can't.
How do you gauge that when you're teaching others?
I mean, I ultimately leave it up to them. I'm not spoon feeding them anything. It's like the whole thing of like you can lead them to water but can't make them drink. But typically, if people come to a class that I'm teaching, they're open. They're ready for
Yeah,
some piece of it.
something.
They're curious. They're dipping their toe in the water.
Definitely.
So that's a good gauge, is if they show up. That's a very good sign. It's a very good first sign. And I kind of just take a back seat and I let people come to me with questions, with things like that. I kind of just turn over to the ultimate interest. It's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that sounds really complicated, like all
Yeah,
this stuff going on.
right.
But when it comes down to it, it's the simplest thing that there is.
Right. It's very simple and kind of difficult.
Right? It's
Yeah.
kind of a paradox,
Yeah,
which we
absolutely.
live in that paradox.
Yeah.
So, moving forward, where do you see yourself in this realm of I don't consciousness in the future?
I see it deepening,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm starting to see how it's affecting people close to me, like family. And I think there will be some, as long as I continue on with my practice, I see it just flowering around me. Like I can already see things starting to happen in the circle of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've held the intention for a long time of like really helping heal my family and friends and people, and I'm already seeing that happening. So I see that to continue to happen, which is awesome.
That's everything.
Yeah.
And for people who are maybe religious, why do you think this kind of stuff rubs them the wrong way?
It depends on the religion, but many religions warn you over and over against things like this. Or,
Mm-hmm.
like, maybe not the religion itself, but, like, teachers of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even, like, I was raised Christian, and it would be a lot of, like, any other, strike down any false gods. Jesus is the one true God. He's the Son of God.
Sure.
This is the one true God. And I think it just gets misconstrued because we're talking about the same
Yeah.
thing. It's just kind of a more abstract way of understanding it. But people around me who are super religious and opposed to it, it really comes from fear, especially Older people are really attached to their beliefs. They're like, I've lived my life this way, I've adhered to this,
Right, the
I'm gonna die and go to
conditioning gets
heaven.
much stronger as life goes on.
You're like very attached to that. You've built this whole thing around these beliefs.
Right.
And that can be really, you build that identity. It goes back to the thing we were talking about of being afraid to sit in a room by yourself.
Right.
Because
Or
you've, and let go of that identity.
afraid to let
'Cause
go.
you've
Let go of your
built it.
personality. Let go of your
Yeah,
confidence.
right.
Let go of everything that you know. It's
Bringing
like
that ultimate humility.
it's taking the mentality of a student forevermore and never letting that go.
I've found that many people who have reached a spiritual point with their religion can hear these things, can be open, can
Right.
see through the, read through the lines of what we're talking about and see that we're talking about the same thing. So there's a difference between religion and spirituality.
Yeah. And it doesn't help to argue. Only
Not at all.
no,
That perpetuates all of the stuff.
all of the stuff.
Yeah.
And it's more so let's find the similarities here
Right.
because there's truly no difference.
And once you've been meditating for a while, it's easier to stop yourself in those conversations when you're like, no, Jesus is not the one path. But you're like, wait, okay, for them, it is.
Yeah, and that's perfect.
Yeah. And not fighting it, acknowledging that their truth is a faction of truth. Okay. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I can see that, like, we're talking about the way. The way is the way is the way is the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's you found it in the middle of the woods, whether you found it in an ashram or
In an
a
alley.
temple. Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't.
In a bar.
It's everywhere. It is everywhere.
It's
It is
everywhere.
everything.
Right.
So the means of getting there, to me, it's all good.
Yeah. I agree. And it sounds like you have, faced some adversity in your life, a good amount, just,
Yeah.
just like everybody. But would you say that all of that was perfect and that you have the perfect life?
Definitely.
See, definitely. That's hard for a lot of people. Because mistakes, like, it seems like a lot of times growing up, you hear, oh, perfect doesn't exist. There's
We
no
strive
such
for
thing as
perfection.
there's no such thing as perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, right? Like,
Everybody gets that way.
I don't know if that's a
Everybody knows
song,
what I'm talking about. It's a Hannah Montana
Hannah
song.
Montana song. So
It's perfect.
yeah. So how do we get past that? That we are perfect? Like that's a huge obstacle.
Taoism helped me a lot. Yin and yang.
Yeah.
That so most people are familiar with that symbol. It's black on one side, white on one side, and there's a white dot in the black side and
Yeah.
a black dot in the white side.
Contrast.
And I love the fact that there's a little bit of white in the black, there's a little bit of black in the white. So, and together it makes perfection. So it started to make me really look at the things that I think are imperfect. Yeah, it's right there. And see that everything is a part of this whole imperfect thing. Everything. And those mistakes.
Right.
Like, sure, you can still call it that, but every single one is a lesson that can deepen your understanding. And if you never had those rubs or that difficulty or those arguments, you would never learn or evolve or grow. Like, if we never had night, we would never have day, and we would never know the difference. If there was never bad, we wouldn't even know what good was.
Right.
So they define each other. And any mistake I've ever made or something that seemed like, basically when I think of a mistake, I think like that wasn't probably like the thing that was for the highest good of myself and all things.
Right.
Those are the things that are like, eh. But
Without
so
that,
many lessons.
yeah, without that, you couldn't see what that looks like.
Absolutely. It deepens every step of the way, deepens that understanding if you have like a reflection on it.
Yeah.
I think it's still perfect if you don't, because we're all playing out our stuff here. We're all doing the things that we need to do. Every being has different karmatic implications that you gotta live out your stuff. But
Yeah.
If you're striving to live your highest life and serve the good of all beings, then reflection on those things that are missteps definitely helps to pull out the lessons, and then you can see the perfection of it. You see, it's more like when someone makes me angry, I try to have gratitude for that. So it's like, wow, you showed me where I still have something in me to get angry.
Yep.
You should, or like if someone, rubs
Cause
a,
right, because you're allowing them to make you feel that way. They're not
right.
making. Nobody can make you feel
Mm-mm.
any kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
They can only allow you to feel that way for
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's truly admirable. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
an admirable place to be
Mm-hmm.
in the journey.
Yeah. And I will like full disclosure, definitely still get angry, definitely forget to reflect for like an hour or two. I'll get really caught up sometimes, and I've been doing this for a long time, so it's like it's not I think our vision of perfection is like really skewed from what it actually is, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like yeah. Nobody's I was about to say nobody's
How
perfect.
about everybody?
Everybody's perfect.
Everybody's
Just
perfect.
I think the follow up is just like just as you are.
Right.
Just as it is. It's perfect just as it is. Yeah, when things don't go as planned, how many times has that happened that it went so much better because it didn't go the way you wanted it to?
Right. And if you're open to allowing that to happen, if
Mm-hmm.
you're allowing to see that as the truth rather than something that you had plotted up in your head, which is not the truth,
Mm-hmm.
it is something that you constructed,
Mm-hmm.
then you can be open to see that
Mm-hmm.
and witness it.
It's ultimate freedom to be free of expectations and really just accepting of what's in your immediate environment.
And like dive into real life.
Yeah, because then you can really do some stuff and really make some shifts and, yeah, stir things up
I
in the
love it.
best way. Yeah.
Well, Lauren, we've done an hour.
Wow, 60
Yeah,
minutes.
crazy.
Cool.
Do you have anything that you want to share? Resources that people can find, things that might help others with their journey or help find you?
Yeah, if you're in the Marquette area, we're going to be doing some workshops this fall. So, probably at the Marquette Yoga Center. That's a probably, so it's like not a for surezies. We'll have something on Facebook under the Superior Center for Unitive Studies.
Beautiful. Superior Center, Unitive Studies.
Yeah, and those are some really high caliber level things, but like that anybody could come to if you're open and truly seeking.
Yeah.
It's accessible for all levels, but like at the highest level. So that'll be going down. If you're not in the area, YouTube is cool. One of my favorite meditations that anybody can do that's a great one to get started is to take 5 breaths, or you can do 10, just using your fingers to count. It goes back to using prayer beads or malas, but not everyone has those on them.
Sure.
So I started just using my fingers. So just taking a breath, and each time maybe folding down a finger. Just count on your fingers. But before going to the next one, making sure your mind is clear. So if something comes up in between, pausing, and you don't count that as a breath.
Okay.
Yeah, so sometimes it takes like 15 minutes or
Sure.
something to do 5 breaths. But it just, that's a good conscious gauge to
That's
see
awesome.
how busy your mind is, where you're at with that. So just like, yeah, I'll just discipline into not moving on until I've taken a breath completely clear, exhaling, surrendering anything that's no longer serving you.
Wow.
You can just breathe in the highest good, exhale anything that's not serving you, and that is like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
Right? I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren.
Of course.
Hope you have a wonderful birthday.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling 22 anymore. T Swift.
Until next time, guys. Ride the waves, dude.